The night air was soft and cool as the yacht drifted gently back toward the pier, lights shimmering on the water. Brianna leaned against the rail, her heart finally calm, a happy smile resting on her lips. The pain of the day's earlier troubles felt far away now, replaced by the warmth of true friends, the joy of family, and the loving presence of her new husband. Jasmine stood beside her, giggling as she snapped one last photo before the boat docked. All around them, laughter and music, blended with the sound of small waves, making everything feel peaceful. As the yacht pulled in, Marcus wrapped an arm around Brianna's shoulders. "Are you happy?" he whispered softly. Brianna nodded, tears sparkling in her eyes. "Happier than I ever imagined." Marcus squeezed her hand, his own eyes bright. With love, he had promised her a day to remember, and he had kept that promise in the most beautiful way. They walked off the yacht, welcomed by the glow of lanterns and the cheers of their closest friends. A gentle wind rustled the trees, carrying the scent of lilies and lake water. Family members hugged Brianna and Marcus, some still teary-eyed from the moving ceremony. Jasmine handed Brianna her bouquet, saying, "You looked like a princess tonight. I've never seen you so strong." Brianna blushed, hugging her best friend tightly. Charles, the man who had made the cruel joke, stood quietly at the edge of the dock. He seemed smaller than before, his head lowered in regret. As Brianna and Marcus passed, Charles stepped forward, cleared his throat, and spoke in a low, sincere voice. "I'm sorry, Brianna, I was wrong. Let my foolishness get in the way of your happiness. You showed me what real strength looks like." Brianna looked at him for a moment, thinking of the pain his words had caused. But then she smiled gently. "Thank you, Charles. I hope you find more kindness in your heart, for yourself and for others." Charles nodded, moved by her forgiveness, and quietly walked away, a little wiser than before. The celebration continued on the lawn beside the lake, under a sky full of stars. Tables were set with glowing candles and bowls of sweet fruit. There was no loud music or fancy show, just gentle tunes from a small band and the happy chatter of friends and family. Marcus raised his glass to toast Brianna, his voice steady and full of pride. "To my wife, whose heart is as big as her. Courage. Thank you for saying yes, not just today, but every day since we met. Here's to a lifetime of love." Everyone clapped and cheered. Brianna felt a wave of gratitude as she looked around at the people who had stood by her side. Jasmine took the microphone and told a funny story about Brianna as a teenager, how she once organized a picnic in the rain just to make her friends laugh. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and soon more friends and family joined in, sharing warm memories, jokes, and stories that made everyone feel at home. Even Marcus's parents, who had once worried about their son's unusual choice, stood up and spoke. His mother hugged Brianna and said, "Welcome to the family. You are the best thing that ever happened to Marcus." Later, Marcus and Brianna slipped away for a few moments of quiet. Sitting by the water's edge with their feet dangling over the side of the dock, the night was peaceful, broken only by the distant sound of music and the croak of frogs in the reeds. Brianna leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder and sighed. "I'm so grateful for you," she whispered. Marcus kissed the top of her head. "I'm grateful for you too. You've taught me to be brave and gentle at the same time." They talked about the future, about building a home filled with laughter, about starting a family one day, about helping others in the way they had both dreamed of. Marcus promised that their love would be the foundation of everything they built, a shelter against any storm. The days after the wedding brought more happiness. News of their unusual ceremony leaving. The garden for the yacht, standing up for love over judgment, spread quickly. Some of the guests shared photos and kind words online, telling how Marcus and Brianna's story had inspired them to look at their own relationships and friendships with new eyes. With Marcus's encouragement, Brianna decided to start a foundation to help young women from her old neighborhood. She wanted to give scholarships and support to girls with big dreams but little opportunity. She met with leaders in the community, shared her story, and soon other women joined her cause. The foundation grew, helping many girls find the confidence and resources they needed to go to college or learn new skills. Marcus, proud of Brianna's passion, donated generously and also became involved, helping the young women learn about business and technology. Together, They showed that real love is not just about romance, but about lifting others up and giving back. One afternoon, months after the wedding, Brianna visited her childhood street to speak at a community event. Jasmine came along for support, just as she always had. As Brianna stood at the front of the crowded room, she spoke about courage and kindness. She told her story honestly, how she had been judged, how she had nearly lost her joy, and how, with the help of those who loved her, she had found it again. The girls in the audience listened with shining eyes, asking questions, hugging her at the end, and sharing their own dreams. Brianna's relationship with Marcus grew stronger every day. They learned to cook together, to laugh at their mistakes, to travel to new places, and to lean on each other when life became difficult. Marcus's parents grew to love Brianna deeply, often inviting her family over for dinners and holidays, blending two worlds into one loving circle. Even Charles, after his mistake at the wedding, tried to make amends. He joined the foundation as a volunteer, helping with fundraising and learning about the value of inclusion and respect. His change of heart was slow but real, and over time, he became a true friend to Brianna and Marcus. Brianna's story and Marcus's support inspired many people, even those they had never met. Their wedding became more than just a beautiful date, became a lesson about standing up for love, about what really matters, and about finding courage in the face of doubt. On their first wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Brianna with a picnic on the same yacht where they had exchanged their vows. The sunset painted the sky gold and pink as they danced together on the deck. Jasmine, now a close friend to Marcus, as well, watched them from a distance and smiled, knowing that true love can turn pain into something beautiful. Brianna looked up at Marcus and said, "Thank you for choosing me, for fighting for us, and for believing that love can change everything." Marcus hugged her close. "I'd choose you again 1,000 times, Brianna. Our story is just beginning." As the boat drifted across the lake under the starlit sky, Brianna knew she was exactly where she belonged. Surrounded by love, friendship, and hope, she was not just a bride or a wife. She was a woman who had faced the world and found her place, ready to give others the courage to do the same. The lesson from their wedding day would stay with her forever. Love, when shared with courage and kindness, really could change everything. 15 minutes after the uncomfortable moment in the garden, everything changed. Marcus stood beside Brianna, his mind made up. He would not let anything ruin this day for the woman he loved, not a careless joke, not a whisper of doubt, not even a shadow of the past. The garden was still full of soft music and the scent of fresh flowers. But now everyone waited, curious about what Marcus would do next. He leaned toward Brianna and gently squeezed her hand. "Trust me," he said quietly. There was something steady and calm in his voice, a strength that gave Brianna hope. She nodded, her nerves slowly turning into curiosity. Marcus walked to the center of the garden, standing where everyone could see him. He cleared his throat. The guests fell silent, watching as he took the microphone from the wedding planner. He spoke in a gentle but clear voice that reached every corner of the garden. "My friends, my family, and everyone who came to support us today," Marcus began, "I want to thank you for being here. But I also want to be honest. Something happened today that made me realize not everyone understands what this day means to us. Weddings are not about where someone comes from, or how much money they have, or who they used to be. They are about love, respect, and new beginnings." People listened, some looking at their feet, others watching Marcus with wide eyes. He continued, "A few minutes ago, someone said something unkind about the woman I love. That is not what I want for my wedding day. This is not about anger or blame. It's about choosing what kind of celebration we want. I want to be surrounded by people who support Brianna and me for who we are, not who they think we should be." There was a pause. Even the wind seemed to quiet down. Marcus then did something that shocked almost everyone. He turned to Brianna and with a gentle smile, held out his hand. "Come with me," he said softly. He led Brianna out of the garden, past the rows of white chairs, and into the driveway, where a fleet of black cars waited. People gasped and whispered, wondering what was happening. Jasmine hurried after them, and a few close family members followed, but many guests just stood there, confused. At the front of the line was a beautiful white limousine. Marcus opened the door for Brianna, helping her in with care. Jasmine climbed in next, looking both worried and excited. Marcus spoke to the driver quietly, then turned back to the guests. For those who truly want to celebrate our love and happiness, I invite you to join us at the new location. If you cannot celebrate with an open heart, we understand if you wish to stay here, Marcus announced. His voice was kind, not angry, but the message was clear. This was a celebration for those who believed in love, not judgment. The guests stared in surprise. For a few moments, no one moved. Then slowly, people began to stand up. Uncomfortable, glancing at each other as if unsure what to do. Others gathered their things and made their way to the cars, deciding in their hearts that they would support Marcus and Brianna no matter what. Charles, who had made the hurtful joke, sat frozen in his chair. He looked around and realized many of his own friends were leaving without him. For the first time, he understood the pain he had caused. He lowered his head, feeling a sense of shame. Meanwhile, Marcus, Brianna, Jasmine, and their families settled into the limousine. The car pulled away, leading a line of vehicles down the road. Brianna looked out the window, her heart beating fast. "Where are we going?" she asked, nervous and excited at the same time. Marcus smiled, holding her hand tightly. "To a place where only real friends and family can join us," he said. "I want our wedding to be a memory you treasure forever." After a short drive, the cars turned onto a pier that stretched out over a sparkling blue lake. At the end of the pier was a stunning white yacht, decorated with flowers and golden ribbons. The yacht's crew stood ready, helping guests aboard. Overhead, white lily petals floated down from the sky, dropped by small drones that hovered above, filling the air with a gentle rain of blossoms. Brianna's eyes grew wide with wonder. The yacht was elegant and welcoming, with a deck set for a beautiful ceremony. As she stepped on board, Jasmine squeezed her hand and whispered, "This is like something from a movie." Brianna laughed for the first time that day, the heaviness finally lifting from her shoulders. Marcus led Brianna to the front of the yacht, where the captain welcomed everyone. The sun was starting to set, casting golden light over the water. Family and close friends gathered around, their faces full of support and happiness. The music began again, soft and joyful, blending with the sound of gentle waves against the boat. The ceremony restarted, but this time it felt completely different. It was smaller, more private, and every person there wanted to be part of Marcus and Brianna's joy. Jasmine stood beside Brianna, tears in her eyes as she watched her best friend glow with happiness. As the officiant spoke, Marcus turned to Brianna. "You are my heart, Brianna. I promise to honor you every day, to stand with you when things are hard, and to celebrate you when life is good. Today, in front of our true family and friends, I vow to be your partner, always." Brianna's voice was clear and full of feeling as she replied, "Marcus, you saw me for who I am and loved me anyway. You are my best friend and my safe place. I promise to build a life with you that is full of love, trust, and kindness." Their vows were honest and simple, spoken from the heart. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, everyone on the yacht cheered, clapping and wiping away tears. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky pink and gold, as Brianna and Marcus shared their first kiss as a married couple. Dinner was served on the deck under strings of twinkling lights. Guests talked and laughed, sharing stories from both Marcus's and Brianna's lives. Even people who had never met before found things in common, brought together by the happiness of the day. The yacht glided over the water, smooth and steady, making the whole world feel calm. Later, Marcus and Brianna danced together, surrounded by those who truly cared for them. Jasmine took pictures, capturing the smiles and the tears and the joy that filled the night. Every moment felt special, as if they were writing a new story together, one that would never be forgotten. As the stars came out and the boat returned to the dock, Brianna looked around at the faces of her new family and friends. She realized that the painful moment in the garden had made this new beginning even more beautiful. Because of Marcus's courage and love, Their wedding became a true celebration of everything they believed in: kindness, respect, and the power of standing up for what is right. Brianna whispered to Marcus, "Thank you for giving me this memory." He smiled and pulled her close, his arms strong and warm around her. "Thank you for trusting me," he answered. Together, they stepped off the yacht, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Marcus stood quietly at the front of the garden, his mind racing, even as he tried to keep a calm face for Brianna. All around him, the flowers were blooming, the guests were settling back into their seats, but something inside him had changed. He could not let the hurtful words just disappear as if nothing happened. This was supposed to be Brianna's happiest day, and he would not let anyone ruin it for her. He squeezed her hand gently, looked into her eyes, and saw the sadness hiding. Behind her brave smile, he wanted to do something more than just speak up. As the officiant got ready to start the vows again, Marcus leaned over to Brianna and whispered, "Let's take a moment." Brianna nodded, trusting him. He turned to the officiant and politely asked if they could pause the ceremony for a few minutes. The officiant, sensing the importance of the request, agreed right away. Marcus led Brianna away from the altar and into a quiet part of the garden, behind some tall green palms. The sudden privacy made Brianna's heart race, but she felt safe with Marcus beside her. In the distance, the guests looked confused, whispering to each other and wondering what was happening. Jasmine watched from her seat, ready to help if Brianna needed her. When they were alone, Marcus turned and gently brushed a tear from Brianna's cheek. "I'm so sorry about what happened," he said, his voice soft but full of emotion. "You did nothing wrong. There are always going to be people who judge, but today is our day. I want you to feel loved, not judged. You deserve that and more." Brianna looked down, wiping her eyes. "I just want to belong, Marcus. I want to feel like this is really my wedding too." Marcus smiled warmly and took both her hands in his. "Listen to me, Brianna. You belong here more than anyone. You've always belonged in my life, and I will prove it to you. I have an idea." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope, sealed and decorated with a tiny silver ribbon. "Open this after a few minutes," he whispered. "Trust me, no matter what happens out there, we'll face it." Together, Brianna nodded, not sure what Marcus had planned, but feeling a bit of her hope return. As they stood together, Jasmine quietly slipped through the garden to check on them. She didn't say anything. She just gave Brianna a gentle squeeze on the shoulder and whispered, "I'm here for you. Whatever you need." Marcus smiled at Jasmine gratefully. The three stood there for a minute, letting the breeze calm their nerves. Back in the main garden, the guests were growing restless. Some were checking their phones, others talking in low voices. Charles, who had made the hurtful comment, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. A few of Marcus's family members exchanged worried glances, wondering if the ceremony would continue at all. Meanwhile, Marcus stepped out from behind the palms and walked back to the center of the garden, leaving Brianna and Jasmine hidden for a moment longer. He took a deep breath, looked out at the crowd, and spoke in a clear, calm voice that carried to the very last row. "Thank you all for your patience," Marcus began. "This day is very special to Brianna and me. We invited you because you're important to us, and we wanted to share our joy with you. But I want to make something clear. This day is about love, respect, and kindness. If anyone here cannot support that, I invite you to rethink why you're here." The garden fell silent. Even the birds seemed to pause as everyone listened to Marcus's words. He didn't raise his voice, but his message was strong. People shifted in their seats, suddenly aware of how serious Marcus was. He looked around, meeting the eyes of his friends, his business partners, and his family. Marcus continued, "I know some people might think Brianna and I are too different, or that we come from different worlds. But what matters is the world we want to build together, a world of kindness and hope. If you're here to celebrate that with us, you're welcome. If not, that's your choice." Charles, who had caused the trouble, looked down, not daring to meet Marcus's eyes. Some guests felt a little embarrassed about laughing earlier. A few people gave Marcus quiet nods of support. After his speech, Marcus walked back to Brianna, who was watching from behind the palms. She saw how calm and strong he looked, and her heart filled with pride. Jasmine gave her a reassuring smile, and together they stepped back into the sunlight. Marcus squeezed Brianna's hand and whispered, "Are you ready to make this day truly ours?" Brianna nodded, her spirits lifted by Marcus's words and courage. She felt stronger, knowing Marcus would always stand up for her, no matter what. As they returned to the altar, the guests rose to their feet again, this time with real warmth in their applause. It was as if Marcus's speech had reminded everyone what weddings were really about. Love and unity, not old judgments or mean jokes. Brianna remembered the envelope Marcus had given her and looked down at it, curiosity growing. She carefully opened it and found a handwritten note inside. The message was simple. "Our love is stronger than anything in this world. I promise to protect your heart today and always. Now, let's make a new memory together." Brianna smiled as she read the words, her confidence returning. The ceremony would continue, but now it felt like it belonged to her and Marcus alone. The whispers and doubts of the past few minutes faded, replaced by a sense of hope and excitement. As the officiant prepared to restart the ceremony, Marcus and Brianna took a moment to look around at their guests. This time, the smiles they received felt genuine, filled with kindness and support. Even some of Marcus's oldest friends looked at Brianna with new respect, realizing she truly belonged by Marcus's side. The vows began again. This time when Brianna spoke her promises, her voice was steady and strong. She looked into Marcus's eyes and saw nothing but love and pride. Marcus's words were just as heartfelt, promising to cherish and protect her for the rest of his life. The guests listened closely, moved by the honesty and strength they saw between the bride and groom. When the ceremony ended and Marcus and Brianna were pronounced husband and wife, the applause was louder than ever before. Jasmine wiped away happy tears, and even some of the most reserved guests stood up to clap. After the ceremony, as everyone made their way to the reception, Brianna found herself surrounded by people offering kind words and congratulations. Many guests apologized for what had happened earlier, expressing their happiness for her and Marcus. She smiled, accepting their support and feeling grateful for the way things had turned around. As the sun began to set over the garden, Marcus pulled Brianna aside and whispered, "The hardest moments can show us who truly cares. I hope today you felt how much you are loved." Brianna hugged him tightly, knowing that together they could face anything. The pain from earlier was still there, but it no longer controlled her day. Instead, she focused on the future, on the life she and Marcus would build, full of kindness, respect, and new memories. Turned golden, Brianna knew their story was only just beginning. Brianna stood at the altar, her hand still holding Marcus's, as the gentle breeze made her veil flutter around her face. The garden looked like a dream, full of color and sunlight, and for a few moments, all she could feel was happiness and hope. The guests, almost 100 people, sat quietly, watching as the officiant spoke about love, respect, and the beauty of starting a new life together. As the ceremony went on, Brianna glanced around, her eyes meeting those of old friends. Distant cousins, Marcus's business partners, and people she hardly knew. She tried to hold on to her smile and focus on Marcus's steady presence, but the nerves started to creep in again. She noticed some guests whispering, their eyes darting to her, and then quickly away. Brianna brushed off the feeling and told herself to ignore it. This was her special day. Suddenly, a soft cough echoed from the rows of seats. Charles, one of Marcus's old college friends, leaned forward, trying to catch Marcus's eye. Charles was known for his loud voice and bad jokes, but today his words carried a different weight. Without warning, he raised his voice so that everyone could hear, even those sitting in the very back. He grinned, as if he was about to tell the funniest story in the world. "Hey, Marcus," Charles called out, laughing loudly. "Never thought I'd see you here, marrying a girl from the wrong side of town. Are you sure you picked the right wedding? She doesn't exactly fit in, does she?" For a few seconds, time seemed to stop. The music faded away, and even the birds in the trees seemed to grow quiet. Brianna's heart skipped a beat, and the warmth she felt only moments ago turned to ice. The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy, echoing in the garden like a sudden clap of thunder. She saw several heads turn. Some people looked shocked, while others gave uncomfortable smiles, pretending not to hear. A few guests even laughed, thinking maybe Charles was just being funny. Brianna felt all the eyes on her. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, and she bit her lip to keep from crying. She had always known that some people would question her place in Marcus's world, but she never expected someone to say it so openly, right in the middle of their wedding. It hurt even more because Marcus's friends were supposed to support Hamden now. It felt like they were attacking her. Jasmine, who had been sitting close by, jumped up from her seat and hurried to Brianna's side. She put an arm around her shoulders, whispering gentle, calming words. "You don't listen to them, Bri. You belong here. You deserve this happiness." Brianna nodded, but the pain was still there, sitting like a heavy stone in her chest. Marcus's face changed in an instant. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a look of quiet anger. His jaw tightened, and he squeezed Brianna's hand a little harder, as if promising he would not let anything hurt her. He stared at Charles, not saying a word, but his message was clear enough. The officiant tried to move on, but the mood in the garden had changed. Some guests whispered to each other, not sure what to say. Others looked away, embarrassed for Brianna and Marcus, or maybe just for themselves. It was supposed to be a day of love and joy, but now a shadow hung over everything. Jasmine glared at Charles, shaking her head. She turned back to Brianna. "Hold your head high. This is your moment." Brianna took a deep breath and stood a little taller. She looked at Marcus, who gave her a small, encouraging smile. She remembered all the times they had talked about facing challenges together, about not letting anyone else decide their worth. That conversation felt more important now than ever. Charles, meanwhile, seemed to realize that his words had not landed the way he'd hoped. His laugh faded, and he looked down at his shoes. Some of Marcus's other friends looked uncomfortable, and a few quietly moved their seats, putting distance between themselves and Charles. It was clear that not everyone agreed with his attitude, but the damage was done. The moment that was supposed to be magical now felt heavy and awkward. Marcus leaned in close to Brianna and whispered, "I'm so sorry. Give me a moment." He let go of her hand and stepped away from the altar, motioning for the officiant to pause. Everyone watched, unsure of what would happen next. Marcus walked calmly over to Charles, who tried to stand up and explain himself. But Marcus gently raised a hand. "I brought you here today to celebrate love," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "Not to judge. If you can't support the woman I love, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." He didn't shout or raise his voice. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. Charles tried to laugh it off, but no one joined him. Instead, there was a long silence. Brianna looked at her parents, who smiled at her with pride. She saw Nina, Marcus's sister, nodding and wiping away a tear. Even some of the guests who had laughed earlier looked embarrassed now, shifting in their seats. The garden felt different after that. There was tension in the air, but also a new sense of unity. People realized that words mattered, that a careless comment could hurt deeply. Jasmine whispered to Brianna, "He's standing up for you. That's what love is." Brianna smiled, feeling a little stronger. She was grateful for Marcus, for Jasmine, and for everyone who saw her for who she was. As Marcus returned to Brianna's side, he looked into her eyes with so much love that it melted some of the pain away. "This is our day," he whispered. "No one can take that from us." Brianna nodded, squeezing his hand. The officiant waited for a sign, and Marcus nodded for him to continue. The ceremony picked up again, but this time it felt like Brianna and Marcus were surrounded by a circle of invisible strength. Some guests, seeing Marcus's support for Brianna, began to cheer quietly for her. A few even came over during the break in the ceremony to offer kind words, telling her how lovely she looked, how happy they were for her and Marcus. Brianna thanked each one, feeling their support lift her spirits a little higher. Charles, now sitting alone, seemed much smaller than before. The power he had tried to show off with his words had vanished. Marcus's quiet strength and the kindness of others had changed the mood. Brianna realized that sometimes it only takes one cruel moment to show the true hearts of the people around you. The rest of the ceremony moved on. with vows, laughter, and even a few happy tears. But Brianna never forgot that moment when Marcus stood up for her in front of everyone. She knew deep down that their love was stronger than any cruel words. Jasmine held Brianna's bouquet for her, smiling through it all. After the ceremony, as guests began to make their way to the reception, Jasmine hugged Brianna tightly. "You did it," she said. "No one can steal your joy unless you let them." Brianna smiled, thinking about her journey from her childhood, home to this beautiful garden, to standing beside the man she loved. She had faced doubts, whispers, and now even public humiliation. But with Marcus, Jasmine, and her family by her side, she knew she could handle anything. The worst had passed, and the best was yet to come. She was ready for whatever happened next, especially with Marcus's promise shining in her heart. Brianna took a slow, deep breath as she stared at her reflection in the tall, shining mirror. Her hands trembled just a little, but her eyes sparkled with hope. Today was her wedding day, a day she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. In her small, friendly neighborhood, the world outside that dressing room felt miles away. Even though through the window, she could see white chairs lined up in neat rows, a sparkling garden arch covered in flowers, and guests beginning to arrive in their bright clothes and shining shoes. Jasmine, her best friend since kindergarten, fussed over the long, delicate veil. Jasmine was always the one to make Brianna laugh, even on the most difficult days. "Hold still, Bri," she said, giggling. "If you move, I'm going to have to start all over, and you know I'm not that patient." Brianna smiled, shaking her head. The two of them had shared everything: secrets, tears, dreams, and now this moment, which felt too big to even describe. "Are you nervous?" Jasmine whispered as she finally pinned the veil perfectly. Brianna nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It feels like I'm standing at the edge of a new world. I keep thinking about everything that brought me here." Jasmine squeezed her shoulder gently. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Bri." Outside the dressing room, the sounds of laughter and music grew louder. Waiters hurried by with trays of fruit and tiny cakes. The wedding planner, a woman in a smart blue suit, peeked in, gave Brianna a warm thumbs up, and whispered, "10 minutes." Brianna's heart skipped. 10 minutes until she walked down the aisle. 10 minutes until she became Mrs. Langford. She felt the weight of the moment, but also its incredible lightness, a sense that anything was possible. Marcus Langford, her soon-to-be husband, was someone everyone seemed to know about, even if they'd never met him. He was famous for building a tech company from nothing, for giving back to the community, for being as generous as he was smart. But to Brianna, he was just Marcus as the man who bought her flowers for no reason, who remembered the names of her old neighbors, who held her hand during thunderstorms, who listened, really listened. When she spoke about her hopes for the world, their love story was the kind people whispered about, because it seemed like a fairy tale. Brianna had met Marcus at a charity dinner she was working at. She had spilled soup on his shirt, and instead of getting angry, he had laughed, grabbed a napkin, and helped her clean up. Later, he told her that was the moment he knew she was different. Real. After that, everything moved quickly. Late-night phone calls turned into coffee dates. Then dinners, and then one cold, bright morning Marcus kneeling on a sidewalk, asking her to marry him while the city around them cheered. Now, as Brianna listened to the laughter of the guests, outside she wondered who would be there for her, really there for her, when she walked down that aisle. The guest list was huge. Friends from both their lives, business partners, old neighbors, famous faces she'd only seen on TV, and of course, Marcus's family. She thought about Marcus's mother, who had taken her aside the night before and whispered, "Just be yourself." That's who Marcus fell in love with. The wedding was set in a beautiful garden behind an old mansion where the sun filtered through the trees and painted golden spots on the grass. Everything sparkled. The glasses, the plates, even the laughter seemed to shine. The wedding planner moved through the crowd with a walkie-talkie, checking every detail. Nothing was left to chance. Brianna was glad for the careful planning, but her mind drifted back to her old neighborhood, where a wedding meant homemade cake, folding chairs, and laughter spilling out into the street. She knew some guests would wonder about her background, how a girl from the other side of town could be marrying a billionaire. She had heard the whispers at the engagement party. She remembered the way some of Marcus's old friends looked at her, sizing her up, trying to figure out if she belonged. Marcus had always brushed off their questions. He'd loved her for who she was, not for her story or her past. Jasmine slipped her phone into Brianna's purse and grinned. "You're about to become the most photographed bride in the city." Brianna groaned, making Jasmine laugh again. "You'll be fine. Just look at Marcus. He'll be at the end of the aisle waiting for you." Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Marcus's younger sister, Nina. She peeked in, eyes shining with excitement. "Ready, Brianna?" Brianna took a deep breath, nodded, and stood up. Her legs felt a little wobbly, but she was ready. Jasmine and Nina each took one of her arms as they walked down the long hallway, past portraits of famous people and old family memories. As they reached the garden entrance, the music started, a gentle melody that floated through the air like a promise. The crowd rose, turning in their seats. Jasmine squeezed Brianna's hand one more time and whispered, "You've got this." The doors opened. Brianna stepped out into the sunlight, blinking at the sudden brightness. She looked around at the faces, some familiar, some not. Cameras flashed. Marcus stood at the end of the aisle, tall and calm, his eyes never leaving hers. He looked so proud, so happy that for a moment all her worries melted away. She walked, slowly feeling the grass under her feet, the weight of her dress, the beat of her heart. Every step brought her closer to Marcus, to a new life, to everything she had ever wanted. She saw her mother wiping away tears, her father trying to look serious but failing, his smile peeking through. She saw Marcus's friends, dressed in perfect suits, some smiling warmly, others watching with guarded eyes. When Brianna finally reached the altar, Marcus reached for her hand. His touch was steady and warm. He whispered so only she could hear, "You look beautiful." Brianna smiled up at him, feeling safe, feeling loved. For a moment, it felt like there was nobody else in the world. The officiant cleared his throat and began to speak, welcoming everyone to the wedding. He talked about love, about partnership, about standing together through life's storms. Brianna listened, but mostly she just watched Marcus, feeling every word in her heart. The guests sat back down, and the ceremony moved forward. From her spot at the front, Brianna could see everything. The flowers, the shining plates, the sun dappling the grass, the guests in their finest clothes. It was a perfect day. She allowed herself to believe for just a moment that nothing could go wrong. But as she stood there, hand in hand with Marcus, Brianna could feel something in the air, a kind of tension she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was nerves, maybe excitement, maybe something else. But she held her head high, determined to let nothing spoil this day, not after everything they'd been through. Not when she was about to marry the man she loved, surrounded by everyone who mattered. She squeezed Marcus's hand, and he squeezed back as if to say, "We're in this together." And as the sun shone down and the music played, Brianna felt ready for whatever came next. Two,